Folks, we are going to delve into OSRIC. OSRIC, the first virtual clown RPG. I mean, it's a milestone in the OSR because it proves what could be done could be done. Now, mind you, Basic Fantasy RPG, uh, early 2006, was in the works, but it wasn't finalized. The final copy wasn't ready until 2007. OSRIC released in 2006. So, this is the beast. It's the one that changed everything, and it revived or kept alive the AD&D 1E style of play. And by the way, there's other games that do this. Adventures Dark and Deep by Joe Block, BRW Games, is also pretty much a clone of 1E. He just yesterday, Sunday, launched a light version of the rules. For Joe, a light version is like 150, 60 pages, but still, it's digestible. But OSRIC stands for Old School Reference and Index Compilation. And it was groundbreaking. It was something that hadn't been done before. And when I say hadn't been done before, Castles and Crusades showed that you could take the third edition OGL and create a new game with it. And they did a game that emulated 1E in a lot of ways, but it was certainly its own game, and it was certainly based on 3E. But in this case, with OSRIC, Matt Finch, who you know probably often from Swords and Wizardry, had the original concept, and Stuart Marshall over in the UK was the editor and put it together. And there were some others that were involved in the project, but these are the main two driving forces. And in 2006, it was released. Now I was trying to find an exact date, couldn't find it. But if somebody knows the exact date that OSRIC uh, burst onto the scene, I'll make sure I add it to the show notes. So OSRIC relied on the Open Game License, OGL 1.0 or 1.0A. And that allowed for the use of the mechanics, but required the avoiding of product identity. So you couldn't claim compatibility with Dungeons and Dragons. And it wasn't clear at the time whether restating or restating AD&D 1E under the Open Game License was truly safe. OSRIC was the precedent. OSRIC proved you can do it. Now, the OGL doesn't cover trademarks. They made a point to that, no product identity. And without that solution, it appeared that publishers couldn't advertise adventures as compatible with OSRIC. So the OSRIC license was another layer to it, and it gave publishers permission to use the OSRIC trademark on covers, which turned OSRIC into more than a rule book, but that's the initial point of it, is that it was to allow for the declaration of compatibility for 1E adventures. It was a publishing platform. Its success surprised the creators. Now, Wizards of the Coast reaction. This is interesting because legend, and I've heard firsthand accounts, is that the reason why it was published by Stuart Marshall is because Stuart was a safe haven. And what do I mean by that? He's in the UK. So if WotC was going to take legal actions, it would have to be under UK law, not US law. Interesting. But besides that, OSRIC, as written, Matt Finch is a lawyer. Matt was fairly sure it was legal. But in American jurisprudence, just because you're right, just because you did a legal act, doesn't mean somebody can't sue you. So, fans, when this was being worked on, were fearful that WotC would sue. Because it's kind of a gray area. And when I mean gray area, it means often Mike's right, and if WotC had sued, you'd have to come across with legal fees and such to compete with WotC lawyers. And we've seen in other lawsuits that big companies can afford big lawyers. WotC didn't take any legal action. Now, I have heard that they sent a letter to Stewart saying that they weren't happy with what was with it, but it wasn't apparently a C&D. And again, I can't find any reference to this on the internet, so take this for what it is, something I have heard. But by not taking legal action against it, they kind of set a legal precedent. And they would have to have argued that game mechanics could be copyrighted, which we know they can't, right? We've already had that settled in court. Other than that, they were following the license, right? To use the wording of the OGL in presenting it. They risked a PR risk, right? A bad public relations issue because old TSR had gone through that, right? What's the joke about TSR? They sue regularly with the S as a dollar sign. You know, they took down the various netbooks for AD&D, 1E and 2E at the birth of the internet. They were suing all these people for making homegrown content. Here, they put out a license allowing for homegrown content, and if they sued, that wouldn't have looked very good. But also, they probably didn't think OSRIC was going to make that much of a difference. 3.5 was kind of wrapping up. 4.0 was on the horizon. They had their own issues. They had their own energies to spend and money to spend. And what's this little game going to do? Castles and Crusades didn't cause any major issues for them. Why would this? Well, OSRIC was going to be distributed free in PDF. That could be a game changer. So for the O.S.R, this put the lift in the sails. You know, this was the tide that was rising all the ships. It opened the door for third-party publishers, Goodman Games, Expeditious Retreat Press, lots of AD&D stuff, especially from ERP. They had a lot of truly good AD&D 1E adventures. Sorry, compatible with this game over here, OSRIC. So it made AD&D style adventures commercially viable. Not on the market size of WotC's, but certainly for smaller publishers. Now, some fans embraced OSRIC as a lifeline. Others, not just fans, creatives, some of the old schoolers, I'm not going to name them, but they were expecting OSRIC to get slapped with the hammer of justice and be no more. And they really thought that it was overstepping the bounds. So there was controversy. But in the end, it set a solid flooring, a solid, stable bedrock for the O.S.R to build upon. Now, you can still get OSRIC for free in PDF. I believe the latest edition is 2.2. I'll include a link to the PDF below. recently, Matt Finch under Mythmere Games crowdfunded OSRIC 3.0. And OSRIC 3.0 does away with relying on the OGL. Instead, it's built upon the Creative Commons. And why is that? Well, because we've already seen what the OGL can theoretically WotC claimed it can be taken away, rewritten, revised, revoked. Creative Commons cannot be. So, now another question that has come up is why aren't there that many derivatives of OSRIC? Right? There are derivatives of Labyrinth Lord and Swords and Wizardry, other rule sets built off it. OSRIC had the 2 licenses that you had to deal with. That may be part of the reason why people didn't want to rebuild a game off of the OSRIC license when they could do such as easily with Swords and Wizardry or Labyrinth Lord. But we'll address that later. Next in the series is going to be Basic Fantasy RPG, because they were the next to the batter's box. And OSRIC, which is essentially a clone of 1E, Basic Fantasy RPG took BX, and it's very much compatible with BX, but it uses ascending AC and a few other tweaks. So it's definitely BX influenced, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a straight up retro clone. But we will talk about that in a later video. Should be the next in the series. Other than that, the usual, folks, please like, subscribe. If you want, you can become a member. I would certainly appreciate it. Leave a comment below. What are your memories of OSRIC? I remember running it pretty much when I came back to gaming. That was my first system to run. I ran AD&D, but I used OSRIC at the table because it was so much easier to reference than the original books. What are your memories of OSRIC? Do you still use it? And if you back for Matt Finch's 3.0. Leave your comments below, and I will see you all on the flip side. God bless. Catch you later.